Today I'm in the city of London to take some photos with the new HONOR Magic4 Pro, and we're going to be comparing it with my $5,000 professional grade setup. Shot number one right here, can you tell what this was taken on? Kicking things off with a nice bright cityscape image to get things started. And then this is shot number two. Which do you think is the phone and which do you think is the camera? This photo was actually taken on the main camera lens, which is a 50 megapixel sensor, pixel binned down to a 12.5 megapixel file. So I can confirm that shot number one is the Magic4 Pro and shot number two is the Canon R6. One of the biggest differences, of course, between the camera and the phone is that the Canon R6 has a huge sensor inside which produces massive raw files. Those raw files on first glance actually look very boring and very flat. This is so you can do most of the editing afterwards, whereas a phone will automatically expose, saturate, and sharpen a photo to make it look as good as possible straight away. So I have kind of color matched and exposure matched the raw file from the Canon with the phone, just to make it a little bit more of a difficult test. If I just showed you the raw file from the Canon R6, you would be able to tell the difference immediately. Moving on to the ultra wide lens, let's compare shot one right here, looking up at these skyscrapers, and then shot two right here. This ultra wide lens on a Magic4 Pro is a 13mm focal length, and the regular lens is a 23mm focal length. So true to its name, this is ultra wide. So quickly make your guesses, and I can confirm that the Canon R6 is shot number one and the Magic4 Pro is shot number two. I'm super impressed with how this image straight from the phone looks. Super colourful blue sky and lots of detail in the shadows, as well as the photo being sharp across the entire image. Depending on how good the wide angle lens on the camera is, you can see the image does lose detail and is less sharp in the corners. The phone simply does a better job at maintaining sharpness edge to edge. I'm not sure how it looks for you on video, but the ultra wide angle photos on the laptop and on my phone genuinely look nicer than the Canon R6 files. Sure, if I spent 10-15 minutes in Lightroom making the Canon R6 file a lot nicer, I'm going to get a better photo. That's because it's a professional camera, obviously. But if we're talking about convenience, shooting there and then, plug and play, no faff kind of thing, the ultra wide on the phone is super impressive. Also, when taking photos of harsh contrast light and shadow scenarios, the phone will automatically expose the entire image, so it's pretty much perfect straight away. Whereas a raw file from the Canon R6, you'll have to lift up the shadows in post and make some corrections to end up with a similar look. So the phone really showing off how easy it is to work with in this situation. The next photos come from a very bizarre scene, 3 bananas on a chair in the park. So here's shot number one, very random indeed, and here's shot number two. I personally think this one is a little easier to tell the difference, so I will reveal that the first shot is the Canon and the second shot is the phone. The HONOR definitely seems a little warmer and more saturated in those highlights, which gives it away for me. Moving on to the zoom lens now, shot number one looking up at a building near the Bank of England, and then shot number two, can you tell which is which? The zoom lens on the phone is actually a 64 megapixel sensor, which is super impressive as that's pixel binned down to a 16 megapixel file. So you're getting that benefits and the quality of 64 megapixels that the phone's producing, but then that's reduced down to a 16 megapixel file, which is just super impressive that phones can do that. So I can reveal that shot number one is the Canon R6 and shot number two is the phone. If we look closely and zoom into these images, I think that's where you can really tell the difference. The phone will typically over sharpen an image and make it a lot more colourful than the Canon R6 or any raw file from a professional camera. The phone's job is to get you an amazing photo straight away. So let's pretend we're not zooming in and being super picky here. If you were looking at these photos on Instagram, I genuinely think it would be difficult to tell the difference between which is the Canon and which is the phone. So the phone actually being quite impressive with a zoomed lens here. Quickfire on the next few rounds using the standard main lens from the phone. Here's shot number one. You've got a nice contrast between the old church and the modern buildings in this scene. And then shot number two here. I also love the reflection from the gherkin in this angle. I think this is just a nice scene. Take your guesses quickly, and I can reveal that shot number one is the phone and shot number two is the camera. Another quickfire using the 3x zoom from the phone. Shot number one of the city of London, and then shot number two from the same angle. Which is the phone and which is the Canon? Take your guesses. Remember that the phone will probably look more sharp than the camera file here. So I can reveal that shot number one is the Magic4 Pro and shot number two is the Canon R6. Now let's take a look at portrait mode on the phone. Here's a sample portrait of my friend Tom. photo on the left with bokeh enabled and photo on the right without bokeh. I like the colours on both, the skin tones actually look very clean and both images are pretty sharp. I can't complain with these. Now for comparison, let's look at the Canon portraits. The image on the left was taken at f2.8 to get that blurred background, and the image on the right I used f8 to focus most of the image. Now let's compare the Canon and the phone portraits side by side. Let's have a look at the bokeh. Which do you prefer? If I'm honest, because the Canon R6 file hasn't been edited and it hasn't been touched, I feel like the Magic 4 Pro produces a more appealing image straight away, and also the depth of field and the background blur on the Magic 4 Pro image does look really nice. There's a tendency with mobile phones when they create this fake blurred depth of field that the image can look quite plastic, whereas the bokeh in the background of this phone image does genuinely look quite smooth and quite realistic. Of course, if we wanted to be precise with our edits, maybe even print these photos and really achieve a certain style and a certain look, then the camera file is going to be 20 times better to work with, just because you've got a much bigger sensor working a lot harder. That's the whole point of professional cameras. But most of us and most of the portraits that we take are probably going to be of our friends. We're on holiday, we're going out, whatever we're doing, just daily life. And for a phone to produce a nice portrait image, I think super important nowadays. And the Magic 4 Pro has definitely done a really good job here. Like a professional camera that can produce raw files, the Magic 4 Pro does have Pro mode, which lets you manually adjust settings and even produce a raw DNG file. This is the file that photo editors will want to use, as a DNG file has way more data to work with when editing shadows, colors, highlights, etc. If you haven't got a professional camera on the side, but maybe you're interested in photography, but also learning the camera settings and understanding manual exposure, all of that can be a little bit daunting. That's where I see this Pro mode being super helpful with the Magic 4 Pro. It's just a perfect stepping stone from people that are interested in photography, where they can understand how photos are exposed, understand how to edit photos with raw DNG files. All of that comes in handy before they actually need to go and buy a professional camera. So Pro mode coming in helpful here for people that want to get started, I feel, with professional quality photos. Let's have a quick look at the video quality from the Magic 4 Pro. The phone does film in 10-bit 4K, which is very good, and the vibrance from the colours in the video mode genuinely look quite nice. If I put the Canon R6 files alongside the phone, it would just be very obvious which is which. Obviously, video mode on a phone and video mode on a camera will be used for dramatically different things. Obviously, nobody's shooting a Netflix documentary on this phone, and I'm not making this review to convince you otherwise, but just everyday moments, sharing stuff online, sending videos to your friends. That's where the convenience of having a really good video camera comes into play, and the Magic 4 Pro looks really nice from first impressions. I want to say a big thank you to HONOR for sponsoring this video. I'll leave a link down below to more details in the description, and I hope you enjoyed this comparison. It's been really fun to make, and maybe I could do more of this in the future if you guys liked it. So hit like, leave a comment, subscribe, road to 100,000 subscribers, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.